Hello, amazing souls. Welcome to the Soul Vibe Insights Podcast, a show to demystify the soul, intuition, and the Akashic Records. We know a thing or two about the ups and downs of being on a spiritual growth plan and how to find the higher perspective, even when it seems like there isn't one. I'm your host, Maddie Hollingsworth.
And I'm your host, Emily Pearl. We've been professional intuitives and energy healers for over 20 years now. We believe each of us are on a unique path of growth and learning, and our intuition is meant to be our guide. The problem is, most of us have never learned how to use it. That's where we come in, helping you discover how your intuition works and the lessons your soul has chosen to learn in this life is what we're all about.
All right, y'all, let's jump right into today's show. Hello, amazing souls, and welcome to today's show. We are so excited to be with you today. We are going to be deep diving into the energetics of emotions, something we care tremendously about and kind of get giddy about, talking about how all this works when we're sharing with each other. So we're really excited to dive even deeper into unresolved emotions and the effects that it can have on your body, like through physical injury, your mind, as in how it can affect your psyche and in turn affect your life and even your soul by actually blocking you from your soul's purpose because it prevents you from seeing your purpose with clarity.
Hello, everyone. Yes, like Maddie said, we are so excited about this episode. This is something that we think and talk and really just ruminate on so much, like in our own lives, but also just trying to figure out and think about how it works.
All the little energetic connections and the mind-blowing stuff. I'm so excited to get into this with you today.
Indeed. So let's talk about your emotions. So how is it that your emotions can even have an effect on your body, your mind, and your soul? Well, your emotions can cause distortion in your thinking, your perceptions, and the view of yourself and your body, and that can ripple into negative self-talk that can be detrimental to your health and well-being. I mean, we really covered this in the last episode where we talked about how negative thinking and negative self-talk can it can really cause lasting damage to your body, to your mind, to your soul. So if that's something that you are interested in diving deeper about, then listen to the episode right before this.
What's on the other side of your emotions?
And not only does this distortion in your thinking from your emotions cause issues for yourself, but it can cause distortion in how you view others as well by causing issues with trust. It can cause issues with you fully letting go and surrendering to life. It can cause all kinds of issues in your relationships if you have all of these distortion surrounding the way you think of others and the way you view others. And I mean, if you're constantly thinking that you're going to be betrayed, or you're constantly thinking that other people can't be trusted, then that is going to cause real issues in your relationships. I mean, every single one of them, even your close relationships.
Anything and everything you're trying to manifest in your life or that's already there, these distortions are going to cause problems.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I meant to say even in your not close relationships earlier. So they will cause issues in both your close and your acquaintance relationships if you have issues with how you view others.
So we're going to approach this from 3 different perspectives. We're going to dive into epigenetics, which is the study of how environmental factors and behaviors can alter the way genes are expressed without changing the DNA sequence.
That's so cool.
Mind-blowing. The stuff that's out there with epigenetics and epigenetic inheritance these days is just so cool. We're going to dive into past life hangovers, which is a term that Emily and I coined when an energy from a past life, from an experience, just like we talked last week about how sometimes our life's experiences get unresolved and we bury things to deal with them later or to never deal with them. Well, those kind of things that happen in past lives, well, guess who's got to deal with it? That'd be you. That'd be me. Whoever's living that current life for your soul right now. And if we don't deal with it, we keep passing it on to the next. So these past life hangovers carry over into subsequent lifetimes. The energy does. These can cause dualistic beliefs, rigid ways of thinking, and limited beliefs or beliefs about your limitations that don't exist, that you don't have, but now you have a belief that you have a limitation that you don't really have. It can really kind of muck up the energetic field of what's going on in your world, in your life, and like Emily just talking about, create these distortions. And lastly, we're going to dive into time capsules. And one of our all-time favorite energetic healers, time capsules is a term coined by Barbara Brennan that talks about the energetics as to why someone keeps injuring themselves in the same area of the body over and over again in the same lifetime. And this can also occur over many, many lifetimes. So if you have a place on your body, you've always banged it up, maybe even broken a bone before in this area, over and over again, you just seem to constantly have some sort of injury or something coming up there, pay attention to time capsules because it's going to get real interesting.
Yeah. And in the last episode, we talked about how emotions can be stored in the body. And then this is going to even go deeper into that as to how emotions can be carried over from lifetime to lifetime. So yes, like Maddie said, it's going to get real interesting. But before we get started on talking about epigenetics, we really wanted to share this story with you, basically because it represents a miracle, but also it illustrates the power and intensity that emotional work can have on your life. This is a true story, and this emotional work more or less brought our friend's mother back from the dead. This story is just so incredible. I was in tears when I heard this story, when it was shared with me. So I thought it was just very empowering and so cool to share it. So like I said about our friend's mother, for over a year, and maybe even closer to 2 years, I can't quite remember, but I know it's over a year, our friend's mother has been under 24-hour care. She has been bedridden, unable to walk or use the bathroom on her own. And just a little background. This is a woman who spent the majority of her life on some sort of antidepressant, and not just one. You know, there was definitely a cocktail of things that she took for over 30 years of her life. I mean, a very long time. She held others responsible for her emotions, and because of that, it created a lot of unnecessary guilt and blame for our friend, who really tried, everything that he could to make her happy. And he's just he's a beautiful person, so he really tried. He spent his lifetime trying to help make her happy. So, to our friend. This is something very interesting. More recently, our friend decided to get a handle on his health. He began exercising regularly, eating healthier, and did a whole lot of processing and emotional work. He decided that it was a good idea for him to sleep in the other bedroom away from his family so that he could use that time to process, to cry, and just work through a lot of really heavy emotions that kept coming up for him. And he even started the process of trying to accept his mother's death. That's how bad off it seemed, and that's how it seemed like it was going. The sleeping in the other bedroom and this deep processing lasted about a month for him. In addition to this, he also changed his internal dialogue and handled himself with more compassion, care, and just overall love. He started being more selective about who and what kind of energies he allowed into his life, and he really started to focus more on the things that he wanted to focus on, and really tried not to allow life to kind of take him away from the things that he really deemed important and really wanted to focus on. So he basically, after this month, he reemerged from his cocoon, just so much stronger and more confident and just a more well-balanced version of himself. You could also say he up-leveled his inner authority. And so after all this work, he was noticeably feeling way better, And because of that, he continued his exercise, he continued eating healthy, and his healthy thinking regimen as well. So that's all stuff that he's kept up this entire time. So this incredible thing happens. About a month or so after that, I mean, this is just so incredible. His mother, who went from bedridden for over a year, emerged as well. Like re-emerged. She went from bedridden to now being in physical therapy and walking with the help of the bars. And this was a decision that she made completely on her own. This is something that our friend tried to talk her into, to try to help her see the light or just help her want to help herself. And I mean, to no avail at all. Like I said, he was in the process of accepting his mother's death. And not only that, but like she apologized to him for blaming him for all of her unhappiness and making him responsible for her and her emotions. She said that she no longer wanted to be separated and hidden from her emotions, that she just decided that whatever comes up, whatever, negative feelings or bad feelings or happy feelings come up, she was there and she just wanted to face them and she just wanted to feel them. She was tired of masking all of that. She wanted to feel again. And because of this, their relationship is stronger than ever. He gets so excited to talk to her now and to keep her updated on his life and going to visit her. Even more than that, he no longer carries this emotional burden of her happiness on his shoulders. It was just such an incredible story, and he even sent me a picture of the two of them, and these are people that I've known for over 20 years. I mean, Maddie too. We've both known them for well over 20 years, and we have never seen her eyes sparkle in this way. It was just like this incredible weight was lifted off of her shoulders, and it began with her being willing to face her hard emotions. And she realized that she was the one in control of her own life and that she was responsible for her own happiness. And it's just such an incredible story. And I mean,
amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing. So for us, we thought this was a great story to share because this incredible story poses two questions. The first one is it possible that the emotional work that her son did have an effect on her as well? Like, is it possible that it helped her? And two, generally, does the emotional work that we do with ourselves ripple through our DNA and affect our other family members in the here and now?
And there's no way to know for sure, either way, in scientific terms. But the circumstantial evidence of this story and experiences in our lives as well sure make us think that it does have an effect. And if you've ever heard people talk about genetic karma or ancestral karma or the energy in your ancestral line being passed down to you, I'm a big believer that that's the case, that we take on certain karma within our family line. Sometimes we're born into these families to be cycle breakers, to put an end to it, to the energetics within that, and it needs somebody to break it. So if it can be passed down, I sure think changes can be passed all around. Right back up when we make shifts ourselves, right back up the ancestral line to all of our ancestors and anyone that comes after.
Yeah, because time isn't linear.
Exactly. We have this linear concept here on Earth as part of how Earth works in the program. So there's a past, a present, and a future. But divine time is just divine time. It's all now. Everything just is.
So let's get started, and we're going to dive into the energetics of those buried, unresolved emotions and where their root cause could be located when it's in your lifetime now.
Yeah, whether it started here or not, but it's here now for you. So the first place we want to jump into is how emotions and how these unresolved energies can be passed down from ancestors through epigenetics. Some of the emotional stuff inside you could be coming from your ancestors. Epigenetics is the study of how environmental factors and behaviors can alter the way genes are expressed without changing the DNA sequence itself. None of this stuff's getting rewritten what happens is the energy that causes proteins to be read as on or off in your genes, this is what happens. These are the changes that take place. And that these epigenetic changes can be passed down through generations and can affect your health and your risk of disease, like physically. Epigenetics is also thought to be the link between nature and nurture. This is that age old, is it your DNA or is it your environment that you were raised in? I've always wondered in my life, well, can it be both? Can it be a little of each? And epigenetics is helping us to bridge that gap in this argument. And for me, the coolest part of this is epigenetic inheritance. This is where the nature-nurture gets really interesting because this is the study of genetic memory passed down. What you inherit energetically from your ancestors, be it positive or negative. Where this really took off was study of mice and how they would train, let's say, mice to eat cheese. And cheese is wonderful, and we can all just know how much little mice love cheese. Love a little aged cheddar. It's just yummy, right? And then they would do something like turn on a red light. And when the mice ate the cheese, then they would do like a little electric shock. So then it became bad. And through the experience, these little mice learned, oh, hey, the red light's on, don't touch the cheese. Hey, the red light's off, yummy cheese. Well, then the mice had babies, because that's what mice do. They have lots and lots of babies. And they would take the babies and put them into this same test. And sure enough, the babies knew red lights on, cheese is bad. Red lights off, cheese is yummy. There was no environment. There was no parents teaching them this. Somehow, through inheritance, these mice knew what their parents knew. They had those experiences hardwired in the energetics of their DNA. So this is in a scientific way where we first started to see how epigenetics can be passed down through the energy, not just the environment, what we experience.
And what's really interesting about the mice study is that this went on through 5 to 7 generations of mice. This wasn't just the babies that were avoiding the red light cheese. It was 5 to 7 generation later babies that were avoiding the cheese with the red light on. So if this tells us anything, if it tells us anything about mice, there's definitely a lot of genetic information that is passed on through, but I think it would be a little bit naive to think that the same thing does not happen with humans as well, especially because we can be conscious of these things that our parents do pass on to us. There are a lot of things that we are conscious of, and there are a lot of things that we are not conscious of that run programs in our unconscious that have been passed on through our ancestors as well. And in human terms, you can think of survivors of generational trauma, wars, or disasters. And this can manifest as their children or grandchildren, where anytime the thunder hits or they hear a loud noise, they can be jumpy or they can be just terrified of storm and not really have any direct link to that themselves in their lifetime. This can also manifest in the ways of personal trauma, poverty, enduring abuse, addictions, undiagnosed mental health disorders, and how these could alter genetic markers in someone's DNA and memory, and subsequent beliefs can be passed down through their ancestral lines. Even studies with humans have shown that it can be passed on through at least 5 generations.
Yes, it can. That was a really important piece of information. I got excited about the experiment and failed to talk about was that this lasted for 5 or 7 generations deep. But knowing that you have this great fear of water and then finding out later in life through genealogy that one of your great-grandparents died drowning. You've had no experience that would give you this fear of water, but yet there it is in your cellular memory. This is just a small example of how this energy can be passed down through the DNA, through the genes.
Yeah, so those kind of things can manifest as fears and just trauma in your body, like literally causing trauma in your body when you have these certain triggers that are causing your DNA to act or react in certain ways to these different triggers.
So when you've had ancestors that have gone through these generational traumas or personal things, it can leave their ancestors. People like your parents, yourself, future generations can potentially be emotionally predisposed to anxiety, helplessness, shames, fear, depression, trouble forming relational bonds, maybe substance abuse or lack of control with aggressive behavior. And to make matters worse, some of these things, these cycles, they can be further perpetuated through words, through family mottos, and generalized ways people think about themselves as part of this group or family that they are in. So if your great-grandparents had super hard financial times, if they were around in the Great Depression, here in the States, what was that, 1928? Something like that could end up going through the cycles as money is finite. It's very hard to come by, and there's not enough. And you could even have family mottos around that. Oh, that's just our luck. I don't have the money for it. Money doesn't grow on trees. Where are you going to get the money for that? Put that back. That's not essential. We don't have the money for it. These kind of mottos, these things that are said over and over again, can really perpetuate some of these energies. And you're just hearing this because it's what your parents said. And it's just what their parents said. And it's what their parents said to them. It just kind of gets passed down and then reaffirmed through behaviors, through the environment, which reinforces the epigenetics in another way. It's not just an inheritance of energy now. It's an environmental, behavioral, family motto passed on as well.
Yeah, and I feel like, yes, we are talking about epigenetics here, but anytime that a thought turns into something that is said out loud, that already gives it more power. And then the more that emotion put behind this thought said out loud, that even gives it more power. And then repeating this thought out loud with this emotion over and over and over, that just like really solidifies. It literally makes this energy dense.
Yeah, that's energy stacking, which can be great when you're trying to manifest something and you're working on positive beliefs and affirmations and you're using your thoughts and your emotions and the vibratory force of your voice. And then you take aligned actions. Now you've got these four energies all working together, creating not just four energies. It's 1 + 1 plus the combination of is 3. 1 + 1 + 1 plus the combination of is 6. It just starts to multiply and get bigger and bigger and bigger. But if we're working on the negative side of the terms, the same thing can happen.
Yeah.
Like Emily was saying, it gets denser and denser and harder to overcome.
What we really want to reinforce here is that awareness is key. These aren't things that you can stop your whole family from saying, if this is something that is happening in your family, but you can start to, through awareness, counteract it. The next time you find yourself wanting to say that family motto or think that thought or have that negative self-talk, you can bring awareness to it and you can start to correct this. And by correcting that, I just mean bringing awareness to it and start having more compassion and love for yourself. Because it's really about bringing that compassion and love. And then if that story that we told earlier illustrates anything, is that can ripple through your family and have an effect as well as the entire collective conscious. Like more love, more compassion. That's what we'd like to see. That's what we're all working on, I feel like, at a fundamental level.
And start with yourself. Don't think of it as selfish. Think of it as if you do the work, you're actually affecting others. So work on yourself first, because if you're not willing to change or help yourself or find more love for you, it's not going to come from the outside in a lasting way. It changes on the inside. The more you can love yourself and show compassion for yourself, the more you can in turn receive from others, as well as find something within them and share more compassion and love for them, for what they're going through, for their unique individualized experience, because we're all going through life. We're all having different experiences. We're all up and down. We're all sad and happy. I mean, we're all the things. If you can find compassion for that, for you, you're going to be able to find it for others. And that is going to help the world so freaking much, as well as helping yourself, which really matters because, it's your life. I sure want to find more love and compassion in my life, and I want more of it coming my way. And I want to share more. So, once I learned to start with me and not just try to do for others and people please and do for myself and love myself, the more I was able to do for others, the more positivity came my way. It's wild how that works. When we start within, how much we can change without on the outside.
And I think it's important to reinforce that when you do have more compassion and love for yourself, then it will start to alter the way that your genes are expressed without changing the DNA sequence. So we wanted to talk about how, some examples of epigenetics. And like I just brought up, it is the study of how environmental factors and behaviors alter the way your genes are expressed. It doesn't change your DNA sequence, but it alters the way these genes are expressed. So are they being expressed in their highest vibratory level, like through this love and compassion, or are they being expressed through these lower frequency vibratory emotions, such as hopelessness or despair? Like, how are your genes being expressed?
So why don't you break down some examples of environmental factors for us?
Some environmental factors that can make a difference about how your genes are expressed can literally be your environmental conditions. How you feel about where you live and the people that you're around. Do you hate winters? Do you hate the heat? Like, how does the weather affect you? How does your living environment affect you? Are you living with a lot of people that keep you triggered all the time? Are you living with people where you can have peace of mind and feel like you can truly be yourself? These are definitely things to take into consideration. How do you feel about where you live and the people around you? How about your diet? What kind of food are you putting into your body? Are you putting fresh foods that actually have life force energy? Or is it all preservatives and chemicals or fast food that are just, and I'm not saying it's never good to have those things, but if that's all you're putting in your body, then your body isn't really being replenished with this life force energy. That's why fresh foods are so great, because they literally help to replenish your energy. What kind of drugs, prescription or recreational, are you taking? These can definitely alter the way your brain works and the way that you perceive other things, as well as chemicals in the air or water, like how polluted is your air and where you are. And then how often do you exercise? This can also alter your chemistry in your brain. Regular exercise can make a huge impact on your mood and your perception on your world, the world around you. And it can help regulate a lot of your bodily functions.
Some other examples of epigenetics and how behavior gets affected. And depending on your environment and how you were raised and the behaviors that were modeled to you, you could end up with something like a fear of failure. So you don't try new things because you didn't see new things working out for others. You could have a fear of death that borderline paralyzes you, so you aren't willing to take risks in your life. Or in a really extreme case, leave the house because you're afraid that death could come along. You could have a fear of conflict. So out of that, you become a people pleaser, or you just go with the crowd because you don't want to create any conflict. So you're just going to try to go with the flow, which means whatever the flow is for others and what's going on, because you wouldn't want to create any conflict. You wouldn't want to step outside of that and choose something that you really want. It's just easier to go with the flow and not have any conflict in your life.
I'm a sheeple.
Yeah, that could be one way to look at that. How your behavior can get affected through the epigenetics, through your environment, through, like I said, with the behaviors that were modeled to you can be huge in your life. And if you never question your behaviors, well, you just don't know what you don't know. So you gotta sometimes ask those questions. Why do I tend to shy away from trying new things? We're all born, we all die. I mean, no one wants to die and it to be painful, but why do I have this tremendous fear of death? Why do I hate conflict so much? It's a part of life. I don't have to create it, but sometimes there's just conflict. It's just natural. So why do I run from it so much?
I mean, I don't think people like any of those things. But if they're like holding you back and like literally keeping you from living your life, then there may be an issue.
The intensity with which things get you, your fears and your beliefs.
And the last group of examples are thought patterns, like thoughts or motto that are passed down from your ancestors or that just kind of are regularly just moving through your family. Things like, well, we don't get to be happy. You can't have that because that's just not something that we get in our lifetime. And this could have a lot to do with money as well. Like, we don't get to be happy, or we're not the type of people that have those things. Life is difficult and complicated, not simple and flows. And I mean, this kind of thought pattern can cause life to be way more complicated and difficult than it needs to be. Feelings of hopelessness when it comes to owning your own personal power. Things like, well, life just kicks you in the ass and that's all that is. And you're not willing to step outside of that hopelessness and despair and actually see that there's magic and beauty in life also. Like, life is all these things. It's all the things. The ups and the downs. It's part of it all. And mediocrity. I mean, mediocrity can run through your family. You can feel like life doesn't have anything else and that you can't rise above that because you've seen your parents or your grandparents or your grandparents' grandparents. That's just how we are. That's just our family. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can rise above mediocrity.
That's just our luck. That's one that was said around my family right there. You almost expected something bad to happen, especially if there were good times. Just lurking around the corner was the catch-22. That's just our luck.
And I think that kind of goes back to not being able to see the magic and beauty in life as well. Yeah, sometimes shit does hit the fan, but then there's also magic and beauty in life as well. And if you aren't willing to see that other side, then all you're going to see is the struggle.
Yeah, if you're always preparing or believing the shit's going to hit the fan, well, what happens when the glitter hits the fan? Can you make room for that possibility?
Well, let's move on.
Yeah, let's jump into the emotions of past life experiences carried into this lifetime as what we refer to as past life hangovers. These hangovers get set in place similar to how we talked last week about when we're having an experience and it's too much in that moment. Those emotions, what's going on, and you just can't really process. So something becomes unresolved, it gets buried. You can get to it later, work through those emotions and move forward. But the longer it stays buried and unresolved, the more dense it gets being held within your energy field. And if it never gets resolved, it can carry over as a past life hangover into subsequent lifetimes. These kinds of moments can create dualistic and limiting beliefs.
So can you explain a little bit more about how that comes about?
Well, let's say in a past life, I had a great love and a freak accident took them away. And it hurt. I mean, that would hurt emotionally, crazily. But I couldn't process it all because of the pain. I just stayed in the pain and couldn't really get over it and move forward with life.
Well, even worse, you could blame yourself.
Oh, that could be part of it too, but How about I take on the belief that I'm not worthy of love, everyone just leaves me? A freak accident took something away. That's an irrational reaction or belief created around that pain that I never heal from. And then I come into a subsequent life and I need to work on that. So this past life hangover energy comes in, and it could actually, this dualistic belief, like we're humans, we all want love and companionship. We all want to have a good time, have some sex. Most people want to procreate and create families and have deep connections and stuff. But I'm holding in place that everyone just leaves me. I don't deserve love. I'm not worthy of it. So how do you help create this without this awareness of this belief? So there's this dualistic limiting belief here where I want a deep connection and love in my life. That makes total sense. I haven't had an experience in this life that would be pushing it away, but I'm holding this belief that I'm not worthy of this, that everyone just leaves in the end anyway, so what's the point? Well, where do I go without this awareness?
And this could be an unconscious belief that you are not even aware of necessarily. It could just be this thing that is like running a program in your subconscious mind that is blocking you from having what you want in this lifetime.
And it may be why relationships aren't working out, why they're blowing up in your face, why people tend to just leave, maybe even when they seem like they're going good. But that emotional pain or that emotionality in those moments is really trying to get to that root cause holding there, which is from a past life. So this is where we need to feel into these moments. Hey, what else is going on here? Oh, this makes sense. I mean, my relationship ended. I'm really hurt. Is there anything else happening here? Is this attached to something else? What do I do so this doesn't happen again? How do I work through this?
And I very much believe that these programs that are in your subconscious mind do come out through your thoughts and your thinking. Like, what is your automatic thought after that relationship ends? Is it, well, people just leave me anyway? If that's your automatic thinking, then chances are that is some sort of program being held into place. And whether that came from this life or a past life, it's still creating havoc in your life now.
The unconscious comes up. It may not be in full conscious awareness of it, but it bubbles up. It comes out quite often, especially when we're not really aware of an unconscious belief yet and starting to get our finger on it. It is those slip of the tongue moments, where'd that come from? Why did I just say that? That thought is completely counterintuitive to what I'm experiencing right now. These are the signs that there's something under the surface there. There's something more than that moment that's happening in your life right now that is being triggered, for sure.
Absolutely. And they also come out through irrational emotional reactions. And these are the emotional reactions that come out that don't really make sense based on what is happening.
I even wanted to say, too, that sometimes these past life hangovers, before we're really starting to become aware of them, they have a physical representation, the energy does, being held in the body. So you may have aches and pains, like physical symptoms, where that energetic memory is held. That wouldn't consciously make sense, but whatever it is, you may have a weird little ache or pain or something going on in your body. I want to jump into irrational reactions just a little bit and kind of talk about those some too. These often irrational reactions with our emotions, they can come from our own experiences as children when our consciousness was less developed. So when it pops up again later, it wouldn't really make sense because it's coming from, say, a 3-year-old's or a 9-year-old's consciousness versus your adult self now, who's way more consciously aware, way more intelligent than what that child took in. But also with a past life hangover, it wouldn't make sense either, just like it wouldn't make sense to a child's consciousness, because that energy, that root cause is coming from a past life experience where you don't have a relevant experience in this life to associate to. And it's the irrational stuff that's key to knowing that there's something buried or unresolved when it comes to emotional energy. A few examples of irrational emotional reactions. It's basically when the intensity doesn't match the situation. Like reacting as though your partner betrayed you or cheated on you when all they did was ask someone for directions and they smiled at each other when they were saying thank you. Were you betrayed or cheated on in a past life? Is it possible that that energy is held in place? You could come to a four-way stop, and as it becomes your turn to go through, someone just speeds across the intersection, which is frustrating, but you lose your shit over it. And the level of like anger and frustration doesn't match that moment. Where is all that anger and frustration coming from? What's really triggered there? Were you maybe made to hold back your anger as a child? Is there something from a past life that is still there? So anytime something that could be frustrating or angry to you triggers that and it gets that more intense? Or if you were made to hold back as a young kid, no, that's not proper behavior. Even though you were angry about something, so then you bottle it up. Well, at some point we need to work through this backlog of emotions. Let's say you're at the grocery store and they're out of several things on your list. Rationally, there's tons of other choices of food. But instead of pivoting to something else, you become overly dejected, feeling like there's nothing left and you're going to have to starve.
We saw that a few times when we worked in the restaurant business.
Yeah, seriously,
People
right?
losing their fucking minds because you're out of something.
Yeah.
Like you can just freaking manifest it on the spot for them.
There's
ridiculous.
23 other entree choices. Could we please just find another one?
But you could definitely hear that child consciousness. What? Give it to me!
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's
You know,
right. I
like
never thought
losing
about
their
that way back then. Totally. Losing their minds over the one choice of dinner that's out there that I don't have control over. You don't have control over, but 30 people in front of you have already ordered and that dish is gone, you know? So here you are thinking you're going to starve, like you're having an irrational reaction. You're just not going to get what you wanted on your list, but you're going to be okay. But is there a past life experience, or maybe did your ancestors go through a really hard time where food shortages were creating so much doubt around being able to take care of one of the most basic needs in our lives, and that's to feed ourselves. That's to take care of hunger. So this is the kind of stuff that you can, when you're having it, what would be an irrational reaction to your surroundings, to your situation, is a surefire sign that there's something else going on, something else that's getting triggered or buried within you from a past life, from an early childhood experience, or potentially being passed down through epigenetics as well. It's your awareness of this that can allow you to work through the emotions and feel into them and to give them that vibration and that movement, because held emotions really just need to be moved and be felt because that's what they didn't get in the first place. So working through these things, feeling these things creates a lessening of the load of an energetic weight of emotions that you're carrying. And if you can work through and get to that root cause, you can actually nullify it and then be done with those buried, unresolved emotions. And that's where you get to liberation and freedom, at least around that emotional cause right there. I mentioned having physical symptoms, maybe little aches or pains. And earlier brought up, do you have an area of your body that you're injuring kind of repeatedly? This unresolved energy could be attracting an experience that's trying to get the energy, the movement it needs by creating a scenario in this lifetime of yours, like injuries. You want to kick us off into time capsules, my love?
Such a cool word,
The
too.
energetics of stuck energy? Ooh.
Yeah, so as we mentioned before, time capsules are a term and really something observed by Barbara Brennan, and she talks about this in her book, Core Light Healing. She describes time capsules as blocked creative consciousness that occurs in a certain area of the body. Time capsules are located in a specific part of your human energy field where this creative consciousness gets frozen both inside and outside of the physical body. So these time capsules are characterized by a particular type of reoccurring wound that happens on the physical plane across many lifetimes. So keep in mind that blocks that eventually manifest as physical pain will show up on the energetic level before they show up on the physical level. So if there is something that is in your energy field, it will show up before it manifests on the physical level. This idea of time capsules, when somebody keeps repeatedly hurting themselves in a particular part of their body, or there is a place where they just can't seem to bring full health or has chronic pain in a certain area, this could be what's going on. It could be this idea of a time capsule. So these wounds, they do not necessarily happen in a linear fashion, meaning that every single lifetime following the original wound doesn't necessarily wound themselves in the same way. And what's particularly interesting about this idea of time capsules is that Barbara Brennan, she says that time capsules coagulate around a particular archetype that carries a particular dualistic belief system associated with it. So when she says coagulate, she literally means that they start to stick together and become more and more concentrated within the energy field. And the way it works is that the oldest or the origination point or the root cause, meaning the time and location in the body that the injury or wound first occurs, that's what I mean by the root cause or the origination point. So each subsequent lifetime that you have this archetype, this specific archetype, with that same dualistic belief system that started the wound in the first place, it will begin to stack more and more of that energy on top of the one before it. But if you were to incarnate into a different archetype that did not carry that dualistic belief system, then it would not perpetuate in that lifetime. So it's super interesting to think about. As this energy starts to get stuck in your energy field, the previous wound becomes denser and more concentrated within the energy field, and the freshest injury becomes the largest and most accessible, like within your energy field. So if you think about it in terms of like healing work and energy work, if you were to dive into this wound, you would be able to clear that wound because it is the freshest. It's the one that's like most accessible within your energy field. Whereas the previous wounds that have happened will become more dense and be stuck behind these other injuries.
Layers and layers. And if you've ever heard someone speak about emotional work or energetic healing or working through beliefs in your life is kind of peeling an onion, peeling the layers back, and you peel one and you're like, yay, I got that layer. Oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one. But onions keep growing outward from the center. So it's like this ever-growing onion that keeps coming, and you're just ever trying to peel away. And eventually you can catch up and get to that center. You can kind of think of time capsules in that way. In the center, the beginning, the root cause is this small, tiny little center of the onion, if you will. And on outside is a little bit bigger layer and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And if you've ever peeled an onion, the outer layers are a little easier to get to, a little easier to peel. And then you get into thinner and smaller and thinner. But in this case, it's energetic and it's denser and denser and denser. Yeah. And it requires more and more energy, more and more focused energetic healing, more and more focused emotional work and self-compassion and self-love and emotional expression to peel that energetic layer, to peel that first layer of coagulation away, and then the next and the next.
Yeah. So let's give an example of how that plays out, because I know that was a lot of information just kind of being thrown out and can seem very confusing.
Okay, I'm going to jump in.
Yeah.
So let's take the archetype of the caregiver, the mother, one who cares for themselves and others. Think unconditional loving aspects, self-empowered, takes care of themselves and can take care of others. So if this caregiver has a child who died from a tragic accident, like a car crash, when the caregiver was driving and the caregiver hurt their knee, this caregiving person could take on the dualistic belief that they're unable to take care of themselves and others due to this accident.
And to their shame and guilt that they feel
whatever
about
they're feeling.
Their child.
I can only imagine, but you could take on this particular belief that...
And this demonstrates how emotions can distort your perceptions.
Absolutely. So you've got The energetics in this memory is held in the knee area in the wound during this accident, during this crazy emotional moment that happened. And afterwards, if you can just imagine, some of the beliefs could be, well, I can't be a mother, I'll just fuck it up. When I'm in control, people just get hurt. A fear of parenting in general. How about I don't trust myself to make decisions when others are involved? All because she's taken on this shame, this guilt, this pain, this responsibility for causing this accident. It may not have even been her fault, per se, but just wrapped up in this. We're quick to blame ourselves at times. So the intensity of this emotional pain has become unresolved and buried in the body as a time capsule. Whether this is the original root cause time capsule, or something like this has happened before, and this moment was trying to stir up the emotions to work into it, but instead of that, another layer gets put on top and makes the original root cause even denser. So now you've got this caregiver who's been hurt, has taken on this dualistic shadow side of this archetype that they can't care for themselves and others. This shadow side shows up later as victimhood energy, as maybe being a slave to others in exchange for basic needs, or someone without boundaries due to their loss of self-empowerment in their own caregiving. So they don't have any boundaries at all. So this reality is truly that this is one moment. This is a freak accident compared to years of caregiving and healthy, happy choices and moments. But this one crazy, emotionally challenging, painful experience, I mean, it would be fucked up, ends up becoming unresolved and not processed and buried and becomes this time capsule. So this creates a backlog of emotions, or what Barbara Brennan referred to as a time capsule. It's holding the energy, the memory, and the emotions in place until they can get expressed and share their intelligence and their perspective, be felt into and balanced, and you've got healing now. And in the case of this caregiver, the reality is it was a freak moment, a crazy moment, but it wasn't her fault.
Or something that couldn't be avoided.
Or something, yes, that couldn't be avoided. It was just a terrible freak moment, but you were never meant to hold it forever. And typically, moments in our life aren't meant to become this pain that's held and carried for multiple lifetimes after. But now you've got the caregiver holding this time capsule. So the next time this soul incarnates in the caregiver archetype, re-injuring this area of the body or stirring up this time capsule, this held emotion, this energetic layer is going to be more prevalent in this life. And you're going to have these re-injuries, these bumps, these bruises, this maybe broken something, maybe even a very intense injury potentially there. But this is when it becomes prevalent now, because that soul has chosen this archetype again and probably chose to try to work on the buried stuff that's there, to move it out of that archetype and get out of that shadow side and into the empowered side again.
Yeah, so when that energy is present within the energy field, then it literally makes the body more vulnerable to that specific injury, because that dualistic belief and that archetype is being taken on again. And it's really, really important, as we said, when you're doing healing work, that the root cause be addressed. It's not always easy to get to the root cause, especially if it's something that is buried down deep within and comes from past life experiences or other lifetimes. Then, it can be deeply hidden in the energy field.
Yeah, there could be a lot of layers in place there. Emily mentioned it earlier, how important in the story she told that illustrated what compassion for self and self-love and taking time to care and to work through your emotions, to honor them, what's going on, and to feel into things, that it can change, but it can take time. And there is the experience of experiencing the emotions, of giving them a vibration, a movement, because they're stuck and held within you. And that's how you work through these old emotions. It's not just having a mental awareness process. Oh, I've got emotions from something in the past. It's expressing those emotions. It's giving them a vibration, a movement in your body, a shaking, a crying, a screaming, a whatever it needs. and getting that awareness and higher perspective from it. And then you can have some true healing. That's when you get those shifts. So sometimes you're just working on a layer and it can be nice, but the big shifts, the big healing is when you get perspectives, when you are willing to ask yourself the questions. Where is all of this emotional energy coming from? I feel triggered. What is it that I'm getting triggered? What else is held in place here? What's happened before that's similar to what I'm experiencing now that I've been holding on to in this life or from other lives? Ask yourself these questions. Work with your intuition. Work with your emotion.
That's really important. Like we said earlier, to be able to face yourself, to be able to face these deep parts of yourself, because if you aren't willing to face them, then they're just going to be creating havoc, not only in your life, but the lives of the people around you as well, because they're going to come out in all of these crazy expressions that are not necessarily being controlled by you if you're completely unaware. And that sucks. It sucks when you have all of these crazy emotional reactions and you fly off the handle and say something you don't mean. That brings a lot of shame and a lot of sadness and a lot of frustration with yourself. And it's about working through that and having more compassion and more love for yourself in those moments. But also, if you are willing to dig down deep, you can help to clear those moments out as well, to where they don't happen as regularly, or they don't happen at least without your awareness, or you feel it start to bubble up and you're like, oh, I recognize this within my body. I'm going to go take some time for myself now and really try to work through this on my own so that I don't act out and say something that I don't mean, or fly off the handle about this certain thing when in reality that's not really what happened.
It's about lessening the triggers, lessening the intensity as you work through it, as you express more, as you look for more awareness and you express more, you lessen the trigger and you lessen the opportunity or the chance to be out of control, to have your unconscious mind blurting things out, to doing stuff that you may or may not regret or feel shame about afterwards because you really didn't mean that. You were triggered and felt intense and lashed out. We talked about that in the last show, that really in time you lessen the trigger and then you have more control for your life consciously. You're choosing your expression. You're choosing your reactions. You're more spontaneous and natural and flowing as opposed to having triggers and buried things coming up.
Yep. The goal is lessen the intensity around the triggers. The goal is not to never have feelings again. That's just not going to happen. But you can really lessen that intensity so that you can feel your emotions in the moment and not have that backlog of intensity from past lives or from childhood experiences that are fueling them. You can actually be like, oh, I feel sad in this moment. And you can just feel the sadness from this moment and allow that to happen. The goal is to lessen the intensity around the experience and the trigger. The goal is never to not have emotions, because emotions are here to guide us. Emotions are important.
Emotions are amazing, and they are really intelligent and can tell us how we feel about things and what we like and don't like in life. They are a wonderful, useful tool in the tool belt of being a human. You have everything you need within you to move through your life. We really enjoyed deep diving into the energetics of emotions with you today, talking about epigenetics and past life hangovers and time capsules, and sharing a beautiful, wonderful story today with you. If you enjoyed today's show, share it with a friend. Let other people know. We would love to be reaching other amazing, like-minded souls like you. We will see you next week.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us.